Hello, engineers. I'm happy to have Lt Col Rockie Wilson, the commander of the 11th Civil Engineer Squadron, here with me today to talk about requirements and optimization, or R&O. As you know, R&O is a relatively new part of our CE business installations. The new engineering element, operations engineering element of the ops flight was enacted by PAD 1203, and it's now FOC. It's a sub-element of operations engineering, and along with service contracts and material control, it was stood up as a way to transition to a data-driven asset management process, which is key to our thinking in the future. Performing asset management appropriately includes planning our workload based upon the life cycle requirements of each asset and programming these requirements many years out into the future. Engineers are looking to be more proactive by moving away from just responding to work orders that you get each and every day, right, as you do that, and instead trying to plan our work more strategically.
Thanks, sir. As you said, we stood up the R&O section as a think tank of our operations flight at Joint Base Andrews. They're a focal point for an advocate-based process where the most vocal customers no longer get the attention that they once did. It's now a data-driven process where the condition of the asset and the relative importance based on the mission at the macro level are used to determine when the requirement will be executed.
But this doesn't mean our squadrons are neglecting our customers. In fact, we like vocal customers because it tells us where we're need to focus some attention. But providing good customer service remains important to our mission, but as budgets shrink, as our resources shrink in control, we need to make sure we do our due diligence to do the analysis to ensure that that vocal customer actually does have the greatest needs. And so we're reducing risk, we're maximizing our ability to support all the operations at an installation. At times, this means that not every customer is going to get their fair share as we used to do. It makes it more important to do what's being done in the R&O section.
Yes, sir. Standing up the R&O section required an initial manpower and resource investment and continues to require ongoing sustainment through the Facility Condition Assessments, or FCAs. The data that we use in the FCAs are used to gather data that push into builder and paver systems to provide an analysis needed to inform near-term investment decisions as well as long-term programs for years to come as well. At Joint Base Andrews, we're nearly 70% of the way complete with our FCAs. Which will enable us to drive our investment decisions in 2016 and well beyond.
So it sounds like your team's making good progress. So I'd like you to share with us now a little bit of the challenges you experienced as you stood up R&O.
Yes, sir. As we stood up R&O, we had a long and hard look at how we both employed our airmen and used their time to optimize the facility condition assessment process. We recognized early on that the FCAs represented time away from the shop and time away from direct man hours, where tangible work orders would no longer be completed in the volume that they were. Instead, we're now focused on indirect hours where they are not. We're reducing our ability to execute work in exchange for the ability to ensure we're executing the right work. We knew we had to optimize the FCA's team's time, given the sacrifice we're making in fulfilling actual tangible work orders.
So it's a little bit about trying to ensure, as doing the right work, that your ladder is leaning against the right wall as we climb up, as we go through that. So how did you make that transition?
Yes, sir. Well, our R&O section did this by creating a rotational schedule where the airmen from the shops that struck the right balance with the FCAs and spending time in the shops and spending time on the FCA. It maximized the team's effectiveness, our airmen's learning, and their ability to take it back to the shops to educate and inform the shops on the value of the process. We all benefited from the FCA work as the airmen had developed a better understanding of the installation's infrastructure challenges from a more strategic perspective, and after they returned back from the FCAs, back to their shops. Additionally, we were successful in using electronic tablets that were previously used for aircraft maintenance on our base to be able to gather that data and transfer it back into Builder, which will ultimately go back into Tririga when we fill the system on the 5th of October.
Okay, so one of the greatest challenges we have today is to learn lessons like your success stories and sharing them. So I'd just ask one more time, do you have any other successes or things we can learn from your experience?
Yes, sir. We're very proud at the 11CS of our biggest success, which is the approval of the Prioritized Asset List, or the PAL. Now, we know that there's a lot of bases out there that have approved PALs to allocate their operations flight resources, but we feel like ours is a little bit different in that we have optimized it by lining it with the budgetary cycle, unlike maybe some of the other bases out there. The PAL determines when we take action based upon budgetary cycles, facility priorities, at a given time within a given fiscal year. So, the PAL, for example, we know uses the AFCAMs, it uses the CVAMP, the Base Integrated Defense and Contingency Response Plans, and the Mission Dependency Index to prioritize requirements. We also know that many of you have already got approval just as we have. But the use of, again, of our fiscal year, plan and execution cycle is what we feel makes us a little bit different.
So what you mean by that is choosing what to execute at a given point in the fiscal year?
Yes, sir. So for example, we initially only garnered approval to execute Priority 1 or emergency work orders and Priority 2 or preventive maintenance and troop training work orders during continuing resolution. Then once the budget was formally passed by Congress and appropriations fell to the bases, we would look at our Priority 3 sustainment work orders. And then as we got towards the fiscal year, end of the fiscal year, and funding became more abundant, we would look at our enhancements or our Priority 4 requirements, only if we had fulfilled our Priorities 1, 2, and 3 ahead of it. Having now implemented this policy for more than a year, we found that it worked well in balancing mission requirements at the base with man-hour availability and now with funding based upon our model. We did make additional changes through the facility board process when we found empirically that things weren't maybe working as well as we thought they would. And that allowed us to be able to pick up certain types of sustainment work that we wouldn't have done otherwise under continuing resolution. So examples may include non-emergency airfield pavements, work on our dormitories to support the quality of life of our airmen, and work at the Child Development Center that could potentially have life, health, safety impacts on our children or impact the accreditation process. Again, these were all approved as exceptions after the initial approval of the PAL at our facility board at Joint Base Andrews.
Well, that's awesome, Colonel Wilson. It really sounds like that R&O has helped manage the workload, the expectations, and the ability to put the right dollar on the next highest priority of your installation. How can we continue to use this in the future, do you think?
Sir, I think that one of the biggest impacts of stand-up in the R&O section is the data not only to begin to drive work order accomplishment, like you've said, but it also drive completion of larger construction contract execution through our base comprehensive asset management plan and contract execution. Through our facility condition assessments, we now have a process that drives B camp requirements even without an advocate or an owner or a user. In other words, we see the project requirements on the B camp that were born of the data collected and not based upon work order priorities submitted by any one customer or advocate. As an example, at Joint Base Andrews, 7 of the 10 projects on the base were infrastructure requirements that were born of the facility condition assessment data that we collected, while the other 3 were driven by customers directly through their advocacy. If we continue to stay on top of our facility condition assessments, I think we'll make strides in our out-year programming and being able to articulate the needs of our sustainment and recapitalization requirements for years to come.
All right. Well, Colonel Wilson, thanks for joining me today to share the 11th Civil Engineer Squadron's challenges and successes with everybody else in the career field as we continue to adjust to this new normal of tight budgets and more agile forces. So we'll be looking to teams like yours, to come in and share stories again in the future.
Thanks, sir, for bringing me in and for giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about our R&O section and our successes. We're proud of the progress we've made, and we're happy to share our lessons learned with the other bases out there. But we also recognize that there are probably other bases out there with their own success stories as well, and we're eager and willing and hopeful to learn from them as well.
So thanks everyone for all you're doing each and every day to support our transformation, whether it's in R&O or other parts of our enterprise. The valuable work that you're doing allows us to ensure we're spending the next resource, whether manpower or dollars, to meet the next highest priority for the Air Force. And remember, engineers, lead the way.